Revision of experiment number 13, human systems. Firstly, a system consists of two or more organs. So this is the definition of a system. And the definition of an organ is that it's a functional collection of tissue. The first system we're going to discuss is the cardiovascular system. It's also known as the circulatory system, and it consists of three main things: the heart, the blood vessels, and approximately 5 liters of blood. The main function of the cardiovascular system is to transport oxygen, nutrients, hormones, and cellular waste products throughout the body. The heart powers the cardiovascular system. So, first of all, we're going to discuss the first component of the cardiovascular system, which is the heart. It is a muscular pumping organ located medial to the lungs. It's about the size of a clenched fist, as we can see here. We need to know that the bottom tip of the heart is known as the apex, and this bottom tip is turned to the left so that about 2/3 of the heart is on the body's left side. And the reason for this is that the left side of the heart is thicker than the right side because it needs more muscle to pump oxygenated blood throughout the body and for the oxygenated blood to be able to reach the tissues and cells in an efficient manner. In contrast to the bottom tip of the heart, which is known as its apex, the top part of the heart is known as its base, and it connects to the great blood vessels of the body. That's everything we need to know about the heart. Next, we have the blood vessels. Their main function is to allow blood to flow quickly and efficiently throughout the body. We need to know that the size of the blood vessel corresponds with the amount of blood that passes through. For example, this blood vessel right here has a larger size than this blood vessel here because more blood needs to pass through this blood vessel compared to that blood vessel. The lumen is the hollow area inside the blood vessel. So as we can see here, the hollow or empty opening inside each blood vessel is known as the lumen. So this here is the lumen of the superior vena cava. This here is the lumen of the brachiocephalic artery, and so on and so forth. The final thing we need to know about the circulatory system is that it can be divided into two parts: the pulmonary circulation loop and the systemic circulation loop. The pulmonary circulation loop transports deoxygenated blood from the right side of the heart to the lungs, and it returns oxygenated blood from the lungs to the left side of the heart. Its pumping chambers are the right atrium and the right ventricle. The second part of the circulatory system is the systemic circulation loop, and we need to know that it transports highly oxygenated blood from the left side of the heart to the rest of the body except for the heart and lungs. So the systemic circulation loop does not pump or transport highly oxygenated blood to the heart or the lungs. It then returns deoxygenated blood to the right side of the heart. Its main pumping chambers are the left atrium and left ventricle, and it removes waste. We also need to know that the systemic circulation loop removes waste from body tissues. Now I'm going to show you a quick video to explain to you, or to make it clear to you, how the pulmonary and circulation loops work.
The cardiovascular system is divided into systemic and pulmonary parts. The systemic circulation carries blood from the heart to tissues of the body and then returns it to the heart. Oxygen-rich blood is pumped from the left ventricle into the ascending aorta. The aorta then makes an inverted U-turn to form the aortic arch, which gives rise to branches that supply the head, neck, and upper limbs. The aorta continues posterior to the heart as the descending aorta, which travels through the thoracic and abdominal pelvic cavities. It supplies the organs of these cavities and the lower limbs. In the systemic capillaries, oxygen is exchanged for carbon dioxide, resulting in oxygen-poor blood. The oxygen-poor blood enters the right atrium via the superior and inferior venae cavae. The pulmonary circulation carries blood from the heart to the lungs for gas exchange and then returns it to the heart. Oxygen-poor blood is pumped from the right ventricle into the pulmonary trunk. The large pulmonary trunk divides into the right and left pulmonary arteries. These arteries transport blood to the right and left lungs. In pulmonary capillaries, carbon dioxide is exchanged for oxygen. This results in oxygen-rich blood that then flows through the 4 pulmonary veins and enters the left atrium.
So this is basically a quick explanation of pulmonary and systemic circulation. And with that, we just finished the cardiovascular system. Next, we have the digestive system, which is a group of organs that work together to convert food into energy and basic nutrients to feed the entire body. A major part of the digestive system is the alimentary canal, or the gastrointestinal tract, which is a long tube through which food passes and contains the oral cavity, the pharynx, the esophagus, the stomach, small intestines, and large intestines. So as you can see here, first of all, we have the mouth, and then the pharynx, and then the esophagus, and then stomach, the small intestines, which are right here, the large intestines, and that's it. This is basically the alimentary canal. In addition to the major organs, which are the organs of the digestive system through which food passes, we also have something known as accessory organs. Accessory organs are organs which help digest food, but food does not pass through them. This is important. And examples of accessory organs include the teeth, tongue, salivary glands, liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. We need to know that the 6 major functions of the digestive system are ingestion, which is the act of taking food into your body, secretion, mixing and movement, digestion, absorption, and excretion. Now we're going to discuss how food moves through the body. First of all, we start in the oral cavity, which is another name for the mouth. Inside the oral cavity, both mechanical and chemical digestion takes place. How does mechanical digestion take place in the mouth? Through the teeth. The teeth in our mouth chew the food, and this is initiation of mechanical digestion. We also have chemical digestion beginning in the mouth, and food is chemically digested in the mouth through the enzymes that are present in our saliva, which mainly in the form of amylase. So this is how mechanical and chemical digestion begin in the mouth or oral cavity. And the accessory organs found in the mouth are the teeth, which carries out the mechanical digestion, the tongue, which helps roll the food into a ball to make it easier to swallow, and the salivary glands, which initiate chemical digestion by secreting saliva, which contains enzymes, mainly in the form of amylase. Next, after the food is swallowed, it goes into the pharynx. Here it's called oropharynx and oroesophagus, but esophagus with an O. But forget about it. For the material of the exam, we need to know them as pharynx and esophagus without the O at the beginning. So the pharynx is another word for throat. It's a funnel-shaped tube whose function is to pass the chewed food from the mouth into the esophagus. So after the pharynx, we have the esophagus, which is a muscular tube that connects the pharynx to the stomach. By muscular here, we mean that muscular movement occurs mainly in the form of peristalsis, which I demonstrated in the last video. After the esophagus, we have the stomach, which is a muscular sac that acts as a major storage tank for food. We need to know that it contains hydrochloric acid and digestive enzymes to continue digestion. After the stomach, the food passes into the small intestine. The small intestine is a long, thin tube about 1 inch in diameter that is coiled and contains many ridges and folds known as villi and microvilli. And the reason for these ridges and folds is to maximize digestion of food and absorption of nutrients by increasing the surface area. Now here in the small intestine, we need to talk about 3 important accessory glands, which are the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas, which is found here. The function of the liver with regards to the digestive system is to produce bile, and it secretes this bile into the duodenum via the common bile duct. The gallbladder is a small pear-shaped organ, which is found here, and its main function is to store and recycle excess bile from the small intestine. As we discussed in the last lab, the only part of the bile to be recycled by the body are the bile salts. Next, we have the pancreas, and the main function of the main digestive function of the pancreas is to secrete digestive enzymes into the duodenum of the small intestine. As you can see, we mentioned duodenum here twice. The bile is secreted into the duodenum, and the digestive enzymes are secreted into the duodenum. The duodenum, which is the first part of the small intestine, is basically the first 10 inches of the small intestine. It is important in digestion because both the common bile duct and the pancreatic duct coming from the pancreas empty into it. After the small intestine is done with, which is divided into, of course, the duodenum, then the jejunum, and then the ileum, we have the large intestine, which is divided into the ascending colon, the transverse colon, and the descending colon. Remember, for the exam, we don't need to know sigmoid colon and anus, or we don't need to know their labels or locations on the diagram. So the large intestine is a long, thick tube that absorbs water and contains symbiotic bacteria. And the bacteria here continues digestion by breaking down the wastes. The feces in the large intestine finally exit the body through the anal canal. We need to know that the large intestine is divided into the ascending colon, transverse colon, and descending colon, and that the rectum and the anal canal are the last parts of the large intestine. The final thing we need to know about the digestive system is that the gastrointestinal tract, or the alimentary canal, can be divided into two things: the upper gastrointestinal tract and the lower gastrointestinal tract. The upper gastrointestinal tract basically consists of the mouth, the pharynx, the esophagus, and the stomach, while the lower gastrointestinal tract is this part, which is the small and large intestines. So with that, we've finished the digestive system. Next, we're going to talk about the reproductive system. Its other name is the genital system. It is a collection of internal and external organs that work together for the purpose of sexual reproduction. We have many non-living substances such as fluids, hormones, and pheromones that act as important accessories. Unlike most organ systems, we need to know that the anatomy of reproductive system differs between males and females. Why do these anatomical differences exist? Because these differences allow for the combination of genetic material between two individuals, resulting in the possibility of greater genetic fitness of offspring. So that's the reason why we have differences in anatomical structure between male and female reproductive system. So first of all, we're going to discuss the female reproductive system. As you can see here, the female reproductive system includes the ovaries, the fallopian tubes, the uterus, the vagina, the vulva, the mammary glands, and the breasts. Its main functions are three: production, transportation, and fertilization of the ova, production of the sex hormones, and supporting the development of offspring both during pregnancy and infancy. Development of offspring is supported during infancy through breastfeeding. So first of all, we're going to discuss the ovaries. As you can see here, females have a pair of ovaries, meaning two ovaries. And the ovaries are a pair of almond-shaped glands that produce the ova, which are the eggs, and the female sex hormones, which are estrogen and progesterone. So the ovaries are important because they produce the ova and estrogen and progesterone. After the ovaries, we have the fallopian tubes, which are also a pair of tubes. They are a pair of muscular tubes that end in a funnel-shaped structure called the infundibulum, which is covered by fimbriae. Released ova from the ovaries are transported to the infundibulum by the fimbriae, after which they are transported into the uterus. They connect between the corners of the uterus, so the fallopian tubes connect between the corner of the uterus and the edges of the ovaries. Next, we have the uterus, which is this part right here. It is a hollow, muscular, pear-shaped organ that is connected to the fallopian tubes on its superior ending, and to the vagina on its posterior end. Its main function is to surround and support the developing fetus during the pregnancy. We need to know that the uterus is connected to the vagina via the cervix, which is basically the neck of the uterus. After the cervix, we have the vagina, which is an elastic muscular tube that connects the cervix of the uterus to the exterior of the body. It functions as a receptacle for the penis during sexual intercourse and carries sperm to the uterus and the fallopian tubes. So the vagina carries the sperm to the uterus and the fallopian tubes. Finally, we have the vulva, which is the collective name for the external female genitalia located in the pubic region of the body. It surrounds the external ends of the urethra and the vagina, and it includes the mons pubis, the labia majora, the labia minora, and the clitoris. So these parts here are all considered to be part of the vulva, which are the external female genitalia located in the pubic region of the body. The final thing we need to know about the female reproductive system are the breasts, and we need to know that the breasts contain the mammary glands. What are the mammary glands? They are special. They are a special type of sudoriferous glands that have been modified to produce milk. In addition to the mammary glands, we also have milk ducts, which allow milk to pass through to the nipple, and we have adipose tissue. So these are the three main components of the breasts. We need to know that in the center of each breast is a highly pigmented nipple that secretes milk when stimulated. The areolar are thickened, highly pigmented bands of skin that surround the nipple and protects underlying tissue. We need to know that during pregnancy, around 15 to 20 clusters of mammary glands in each breast become active until milk is no longer needed. So that's basically the female reproductive system. After the female reproductive system, we have the male reproductive system. The male reproductive system includes the scrotum, testes, spermatic ducts, sex glands, and penis. They produce the sperm, which is the male gamete, and the components of the semen. They deliver semen out of the body and into the vagina where it can fertilize egg cells. And we need to know that semen is the fluid produced by males which contains the sperm along with a number of chemicals which give it a thick, sticky consistency and a slightly alkaline pH. First of all, we have in the male reproductive system, we have the scrotum, which is this part. It is a sac-like organ that houses the testes and regulates its temperatures. It contains smooth muscle which moves the testicles either closer to the body or further to the abdomen or further away from the abdomen depending on the external temperature. The scrotum houses two things, the testes and the epididymis, which wraps around the testes. Now, the main function of the testes, or the testicles, in which there are two in every male, they are the male gonads responsible for the production of sperm and testosterone. So the ovaries, which we discussed in the female reproductive system, are responsible for the production of ova and the female sex hormones, which are estrogen and progesterone. And the testes are responsible for the production of sperm and the male sex hormone, which is testosterone. So the testes produce sperm, but they then have to be moved. They then are moved to the epididymis, which is this part, for storage and maturation. So the sperm are produced in the testes, but they are stored and matured in the epididymis. So the epididymis is a sperm storage area that wraps around the testes and allows sperm to mature. After the epididymis, we have the spermatic cords, which connect the testes to the abdominal cavities and contains the ductus deferens, along with nerves, veins, arteries, and lymphatic vessels. The ductus deferens, this part here, is also known as the vas deferens. It is a muscular tube that carries sperm from the epididymis to the ejaculatory duct here. This is the ejaculatory duct. And the ejaculatory duct is located in the abdominal cavity. The semen is moved through the ductus deferens via peristalsis using the smooth muscle. We need to know about a couple of accessory glands. First of all, we have the seminal vesicles, which are these glands here. They are a pair of lumpy exocrine glands that store and produce some of the liquid portion of semen. This liquid contains proteins, mucus, an alkaline pH, and fructose. The reason for the alkaline pH is to help the sperm survive in the acidic environment of the vagina so that neutralization can occur. And the reason for containing fructose is in order to feed the sperm. So fructose and an alkaline pH and mucus and proteins is produced by the seminal vesicles. During sexual intercourse, the ejaculatory duct, which contains the openings of the ductus deferens and the seminal vesicles, opens and expels the sperm and the seminal secretions into the urethra. So here in the ejaculatory duct, we can see that there is an opening for the ductus deferens, which brings sperm, and we have an opening for the seminal vesicles, which brings the liquid portion of semen. So they are mixed together inside the ejaculatory duct. After the ejaculatory duct, the semen moves to the urethra. And the urethra here, as we can see here, it connects between the ejaculatory duct and the outside of the body, which is the external urethral orifice. We also need to know about two accessory glands, which are the prostate and the Cowper's glands. Now, the main function of the prostate is to it's a walnut-sized exocrine gland that produces a large portion of the milky white seminal fluid. So this prostate gland here produces a large portion of the seminal fluid, and we also need to know about the Cowper's glands. The Cowper's glands is also known as the bulbourethral gland, which is this gland here. The main function of the Cowper's glands is to secrete a thin alkaline fluid into the urethra that lubricates it and neutralizes the acids from the urine. The difference between the male and female reproductive systems is that the part or the external opening of the female reproductive system is the vagina, while the opening that leads to the external part of the body in males is the urethra. And the urethra in males is a part of both the reproductive and the urinary system. So the Cowper's glands need to secrete alkaline fluid in order to neutralize any leftover urine before the semen comes through. Because as we said, an alkaline pH is damaging to the sperm, and they need to be neutralized. Acidic pH is damaging to the sperm, and urine is acidic, so it has to be neutralized before it can be before the semen can pass through. Finally, we have the penis, which is the male external organ. Now, after first of all, before we get to the respiratory system, we have the muscular system. It is responsible for the movement of the human body. We have around 700 named muscles that make up roughly half a person's weight. We need to know that there are three types of muscles: visceral muscles, cardiac muscles, and skeletal muscles. Visceral muscles are found inside of organs like the stomach, intestines, and blood vessels, and they make organs contract to move substances through the organ, like peristalsis and segmentation. Visceral is basically another name for smooth muscles. Then we have cardiac muscle, which is only found in the heart, and they're responsible for pumping blood throughout the body. Finally, we have the skeletal muscles, which are the only voluntary muscle tissue in the human body. They contract to move parts of the body closer to the bone that the muscle is attached to. Next, we have the respiratory system, which is also known as the respiratory apparatus and the ventilator system. It is a biological system consisting of specific organs and structures used for the process of respiration in an organism. The definition of respiration on the system level is different from the definition of respiration on the cellular level that we took in Lab 5. Respiration here can be defined as the intake and exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between an organism and its environment. We have three main parts of the respiratory system: the airway, the lungs, and the muscles of respiration. First of all, we're going to talk about the airway. It includes the nose, mouth, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, and bronchioles. Its function is to carry air between the lungs and the body's exterior. First of all, we're going to start with the nose, or the nostril, and then the nasal cavity. The nose and nasal cavity form the main external opening of the respiratory system, and its function is to warm, moisturize, and filter air entering the body before it reaches the lungs. So the main or the primary external opening of the respiratory system is the nose and nasal cavity. The mouth or the oral cavity is a secondary external opening for the respiratory tract. It's only used to supplement or replace nasal breathing as needed. The pathway of air between the mouth and the lungs is much shorter than the pathway between the nose and the lungs. After the mouth or the nose, we have the pharynx, which is the throat. and its function, it's a muscular funnel that extends from the posterior end of the nasal cavity to the superior end of the esophagus and the larynx. Now here, how do we know, how does the body decide whether the air enters the larynx or the esophagus? Via the epiglottis. The epiglottis is a flap of elastic cartilage that acts as a switch between the trachea and the esophagus. So when we're breathing, the epiglottis opens from on top of the larynx in order to allow air to pass through. So the larynx is found, which is this part here. The larynx is found in the anterior portion of the neck and is covered by the epiglottis during swallowing. After the larynx, we have the trachea. The trachea windpipe is 5 inches long with the function of providing a clear airway for air to enter and exit the lungs. The epithelium lining of the trachea produces mucus, and this mucus traps dust and other contaminants. The trachea then splits into the right bronchus and the left bronchus, which are the primary bronchi that run into each lung. And these bronchi then split into the secondary and then tertiary bronchi. And the tertiary bronchi then splits into smaller bronchioles, which then split into terminal bronchioles. And the terminal bronchioles conduct air to the alveoli of the lungs. So this is everything we need to know about the airway. After the airway, we have the lungs themselves, which are a pair of large spongy organs. They are the functional units of the respiratory system by passing oxygen into the body and carbon dioxide out of the body. We need to know that the left lung is smaller than the right lung because the left lung here contains only 2 lobes, the upper and lower lobe, while the right lung is larger because it contains 3 lobes. The upper lobe, the middle lobe, and lower lobe. For the exam, we don't need to know that they're called upper, middle, and lower. We just need to know that the left lung is smaller than the right lung because it contains 2 lobes, while the right lung contains 3 lobes. So the interior of the lungs is made up of spongy tissue containing many capillaries and around 30 million sacs. These sacs are known as alveoli. The alveoli are lined with simple squamous epithelium that allow it to exchange gases with the blood of the capillaries. Finally, we have the muscles of respiration. For the muscles of respiration, we just need to know that the principal muscle of respiration is the diaphragm, and the assistant muscle is the, so this part here, the diaphragm, it's the principal muscle of respiration, while the intercostal muscles, these muscles in between, they're the assistant muscles. These 2 muscles work together as a pump to push air in and out of lungs during breathing.